So I'm going to start with the yellow limits review. It is. Yeah, I don't know. English is a dumb subject. Yeah. We should take 2 math classes and no English classes. Okay. So we didn't do 1 through 11. So starting on number 12. What is the function value of 0? It does not exist. What is the function value of 2? 0. What is the function value of 3? It does. It is 3. The limit as x goes to infinity. What is y going to as x goes to infinity? Negative infinity would be the correct answer. The limit as x goes to negative infinity. That one is 1. That's what I thought you meant. So this one is going to negative infinity, but the y value is going to 1 here. The limit as x goes to 0 from the positive side. 2. The limit as x goes to 0 from the negative side. So look, what's happening to the y from the negative side? Negative infinity. So what is the limit at 0? Because why? These do not match. If they don't match, it does not exist. The limit as x goes to 3 from the positive side. 2. The limit as x goes to 3 from the negative side. The limit as x goes to 3 does not exist. Okay, so the back is for practice for you.
You know how the first 3, like the function value?
Yeah.
That always has like the x or whatever it is.
Where the closed dot is. Okay, so here's the next thing I'm going to look at is I'm going to start the review. So there's a part on the test that is limits. But the majority of the test is the parent function stuff. So first of all, what is the parent function on number 1? Square root. What is the negative in front? What is the actual? Okay, so let's get it right. Which variable are you multiplying if it's outside? Y. So it's a reflection over the x-axis. So it's a reflection over the x-axis. And so just to kind of help you a little bit, so the square root function looks like this, right? It would be, correct. So what is the parent function on number 2? It's the rational. So first of all, this is something I want to clarify. I didn't count off on the quiz and I didn't count off on the test, but I mean on the homework, but I will count on the test. So the rational function has 2 asymptotes. And on every graph I've drawn, I put my asymptotes in there. And if you're not putting the asymptotes in there, it's wrong. So here's my asymptotes on the rational function. It goes this way and this way. And we only have 2 points that we use for the rational function. It's 1 here and 1 here. What? The square root one does not. But the square root one starts at 0, 0. It has a vertex, correct? And that's it's not the log function because the log function keeps going, right? So you'll be able to tell the difference between a log and a square root because the square root just starts at 0, 0, but the log has a function, has a bottom part to it, and it also has an asymptote, and the square root function doesn't. Okay, so what is number 2? So what is the transformation that's happening here? It's the rational, but what's the 1/2? Is it with the x? So, okay, so it's with the x on the bottom. So this, if you write it like this, right, and it's with the x, it's a liar, so it's a horizontal stretch. Oh, no, compression, you're right. Compression, horizontal compression of a 1/2. You're going to divide by 2. What is the parent function on number 3? Absolute value. And for the record, the absolute value has arrows on the end of it. It is a V and it is not a circle on the bottom. Because if you make it a circle on the bottom, it's a parabola and not an absolute value. So it looks like this, right? And what's the shift on number 3? Which way? 2 to the left. Say that again. The answer is positive. So what's the parent function on number 4? It's not the exponential. It's the quadratic. Makes the parabola, right? And the 1/3 is with the x, so this is a horizontal stretch. Number 5, what's the parent function, please? It's not the rational. It's the inverse squared. The inverse squared also has 2 asymptotes, and it was this way and this way. Right there, honey, I just drew it. 1 over x squared. Yeah. Okay, what's the parent function on number 6? Quadratic, so that makes a parabola. And what's the transformation this time? Reflection over the y. What is the parent function on number 7? It's not. It's the cubic. Because what is the transformation? It's the absolute value of y. So on your blank graph paper, okay, we'll come back to it. On a blank graph paper, where I want to graph y equals the absolute value of x cubed. So first of all, for the absolute value of y, what do? Keep the positive what? positive y values, because the absolute value of y, we want all the positive y values. And then what do I do with my negative y values? Change them to positive, right? So the first thing you have to do this is you have to have a graph of the x to the third. And so all through this thing, everybody keeps asking, how do you know how do you memorize those charts? Okay, I am old and I do not memorize anything. There's too much in my brain to memorize. I can't do it. But what I could do is say, if I'm going to graph this, I'm going to pick some points. So if I pick -2, what is -2 to the third? -8. If I pick -1, it's -1. 0 is 0. Right. So now you have the chart, and you told me what to do. What do I do? So I know I have to plot these points, right? So I know I have to keep that part. And then what do I do to the negative y's? Make them positive and plot it. So could you do that on a test tomorrow? Keep the positive y's, take the negative, and flip them. All right, go back to number 8. So this is the cube root, and the cube root looks like this. Correct. And what does the 4 tell me? What do I do to that? It's a stretch of 4. Oh, it's a vertical stretch, sorry. Okay. Is everybody okay so far? So tomorrow on the test, there's a section that looks like this, like where you have to tell me what the transformations are. Okay? So I think most of you can do that. If you don't put horizontal and vertical, you get that wrong. Okay? Because you have to tell me which variable it's going with. So horizontal goes with the x's and vertical goes with the y's. All right. So the other thing is, then there's a whole section on the front page that's matching. And it's going to say, it's going to give you this equation, like 1 over x minus 4 squared. And all there are graphs. And you just have to pick the graph that matches. So if you don't know, this is the inverse squared. So in my mind, I'm like, this is the inverse squared. That goes like that. The minus 4 moves it 4 to the right. So you just have to find the two things that are shifted 4 to the right. And that's how you'll find the graph. But if you don't know what it looks like, this is going to be an impossible task. Okay? So starting on number 9, there's a whole section that looks like these also. Yeah, these are the super easy ones. These are like gimme points. So I'm given the point -6, 9. So if I have to do a negative x, which variable does that affect? The x. So that -6 becomes +6. So the +3 would actually be -3. So this would be -9, 9. The 4 on the outside, which variable do I multiply? Y. So I get -6, 36. The -2, does that go for the x or the y? The y. So I'm going to have -6, 7. So the negative on the outside, which variable does that affect? Y. So the 9 becomes negative. And the 6 on the inside, x or y? X, multiply or divide? Divide. So it's -1, -9. So the -8 goes with the x. So that's +8. So that's 2. And then 9 minus 5 is 4. Okay, so I feel like starting on number 15 is where the problems came in. So the problems come in if you don't know what the parent function looks like. So I know my parent function is the square root. And I know that the square root normally starts here and goes this way, correct? Okay, so if I know that, my parent function is the square root of x. So if I have 0, 0, and I just pick points I can graph. So now the negative is going to affect the x's. And the -2 is going to affect the y's. So you plot your new points. And there's your graph. Oh, dang it, sorry. You're right. This way, yeah. I know. Now they're seeing me make a mistake. Well, y'all know I make mistakes all the time. It's all right. You're right. It goes that way. Sorry. So, number 16. What is the parent function? Cubic. The negative is going to go on the y column, and the -1 is going to be +1 on the x. So graph that. We already made a table over on the blank sheet of the x to the third. Stop whining. Graph that. So the negative flipped it, and I moved it 1 to the right. Okay? All right. All right. Y'all go back to that, your blank sheet of paper.
I'm so upset. I thought that I got it right.
Okay, y equals 3 to the x. First of all, what kind of, what's the parent function called? Exponential. It's the exponential, and where is the asymptote for the exponential? It's on the x-axis. So here's the x. It's going to go through here, and it's going to look something like that. So I know it's going to look something like that. So how do I graph this? What do I do next? It's the exponential with the base of 3. You don't move anything to the left. You got to plug in some numbers, and you have to graph it.
1, 0.
So I get negative 1/3, 1, 3, and 9. I'm going to put in the asymptote because you're going to get it wrong if you don't. Yeah. No. Yeah, that's all right. Yeah. Yeah, if it doesn't shift, that's okay. So, was there any magic to how I came up with these numbers? Can you pick whatever you want? Oh, positive 1/3. Thank you. Man, 2 mistakes in one video. Okay. So, was there magic to how I did this? There isn't. Okay? So next, what I want to know is what else do I have to use this for? For the log, correct? If there's a log problem, you have to do this first before you can do the log. And so if there's a log transformation, you can't do it until you do this. You can't do this unless you do this table first. Because once I have this table, what do? What do I do with that? It's the inverse, so we're going to flip. So I'm going to get 1/3, negative 1. And so if the exponential has an asymptote on the x-axis, where does the log have the asymptote? So it's down here. So this is what the log looks like. Okay, so now watch. If I had this, okay, if I have this as my function, this is my function, and I ask you to do this, it's the absolute value. What do? Just tell me in words what I do. Make all what positive? The y's this time. So here's my positive y's, right? So I'm going to keep this. And then what do I do with this? Flip it up, right? So it would go like that if I was given points, correct? Okay. So something like this has been on the homework. And something like this is on your test. So if you had this, what do I do with this? Keep the positive x's. So I'm going to keep my positive x's. And I take this and I flip it. So it would look like that. Take this and flip it. So, what? Okay. So do y'all see the difference between these? Okay. So, back to the review sheet. So look at number 20. Number 20 is a semicircle, and what's the radius? What's the square root of 16? 4. So when I'm graphing the semicircle, I would count out 4 in all the directions. Right? Don't draw it in, just plot those points real quick. Because the semicircle is only the top. So the 2 affects which value, x or y? So instead of 4, what would the 4 be? 8. So I'm going to move this up here, and I'm going to draw. Semi-oval. Okay, so finish graphing on the back, and I'll show you some of the answers before you go. Yes.